My wife cheated on me with her boss, and now she's suing me for half our $750, $0 estate, claiming I squashed her career. I never imagined betrayal could turn into $1 million legal nightmare. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, and then turn around to face a legal nightmare that could wipe us out financially. Honestly, it feels like some messed up soap opera. Things were good, or so I thought, until I started noticing little cracks in the perfect facade. It all started subtly. Late nights that turned into unexplained absences, her phone constantly on silent, and a strange edge to her attitude when I asked questions. But I brushed it off, convinced I was just paranoid or maybe just overthinking things. We had a nice life, or so I believed. A $750, $0 estate, a good job, 2 kids we loved, and a marriage that seemed solid on the surface. But then I started noticing her phone more often, hiding it when I came close, deleting texts and changing her password. She was bitchy, snappish, more than usual, and I caught her in little lies about where she was or who she was with. Still, I didn't want to believe the worst. I told myself maybe she was just stressed, maybe work was piling up. But then, one night, everything changed. I found her phone on the kitchen table, unlocked, open to a photo of her and her boss, Mark, in a hotel room, half-dressed with her hand on his thigh. The caption said, "Finally, some real fun," with a laughing emoji. That moment hit me like a freight train. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How many times had I been blind to her lies? I felt sick, betrayed, furious. I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. This wasn't just some fling. It was her boss, someone she was supposed to be working with, someone I knew about professionally but never suspected of this kind of betrayal. I couldn't believe she'd lie so blatantly, so brazenly, right in front of my face. And the worst part, the way she lied afterward, denying everything, calling me crazy, saying I was paranoid or jealous. I could see her bitchy smirk like she thought she was smarter than me. I spent the next few days trying to process what I'd seen. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started digging, going through her emails, texts, social media, trying to piece together how long this had been happening. I found messages from Mark talking about meetings, jokes, plans for after work, even flirtatious comments. It was clear she'd been sneaking around for months. I was stunned at how easily she lied, how good she was at hiding it. The worst part, I realized she'd been wearing a different face at home. She was bitchy, dismissive, always snapping at me, yet secretly she was out having sex with her boss. How many times had I been a fool? How many nights had I gone to bed thinking she loved me? It's like I was living with a stranger, someone I didn't even recognize. And the money, our estate, our future, suddenly felt fragile. I'd worked hard for everything, and now I wondered if this betrayal was going to destroy everything we built. I didn't sleep that night. The anger started to boil inside me. I decided I'd confront her, but I wanted to do it on my terms. I needed to know exactly how deep this went, what she'd done, and most importantly, what she thought she was going to get away with. The betrayal cut so deep I could feel it physically. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she risk everything for some secret sex with her boss? And what about the money? Our estate. Half of it was supposed to go to the kids, and now I wondered if she'd even consider that, or if her greed and her desire for Mark had clouded everything. The moment I saw that photo, I knew my life was about to change forever. I had no idea just how much, or how far she'd go to keep her lies hidden, or how she'd try to turn it all around to paint me as the villain. But I was done being naive. I was done pretending everything was fine. I had to face the ugly truth, and I knew once I did, nothing would ever be the same. The confrontation didn't happen right away. I needed a plan, a way to catch her off guard and get the truth. I started gathering evidence, digging into her phone, her emails, even her bank accounts, anything that could give me a clearer picture. I wanted her to slip up, to show her hand. Meanwhile, she kept acting like everything was normal, but I saw the cracks. She was more bitchy than ever, snapping at the kids, giving me cold stares when I tried to talk to her. It was clear she knew I was onto her, or at least sensed I was suspicious. One night I decided enough was enough. I set up a small hidden camera in the living room, aimed at the hallway where she often took her phone. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to hide something again. That night she was unusually tense, packing around, looking over her shoulder. I watched from the other room, heart pounding, as she grabbed her phone and started texting furiously. I managed to catch some of her messages: flirtatious banter, plans to meet Mark again, and a bunch of lies about working late or staying overnight at a friend. I felt like I was living in some nightmare. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The next day I called her out in a calm but firm voice. "We need to talk," I said, watching her reaction. Her face flickered with a mixture of annoyance and guilt, but she quickly masked it with her usual bitchy attitude. "What now? You're paranoid," she snapped, crossing her arms. I pulled out the evidence, screenshots of her texts, the hotel photo, her bank statements showing money transfers to Mark's account. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She started to lie, saying it was all a mistake, that Mark was just a work friend, that I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure. I didn't buy it, not for a second. Her tone was defensive, her words full of bullshit. She kept insisting she loved me, that she was just stressed, that Mark meant nothing. But I saw through her. She was trying to spin it to make me feel guilty or crazy. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been screwing her boss for months, and that I had proof. Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're just jealous because Mark doesn't want your old ass anymore," she spat. That hit me hard. I realized she'd been feeding herself a lie, convincing herself she was the victim and that I was the villain. That moment, everything changed. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and disgust. I had trusted her, loved her, built a life with her. And now I saw her for what she really was: a bitchy, manipulative liar who'd risked everything for some meaningless sex. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. The woman I married, the mother of my children, had been cheating on me with her boss and lying right to my face. It was like my entire world was crumbling around me, and I didn't even know where to start picking up the pieces. But even as I was drowning in shock, something else took over. I started thinking about how to handle this mess. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it, not without consequences. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, and I wanted to make her pay. Not with violence, but with the kind of revenge that hits where it hurts: their reputation, their finances, their future. I had enough evidence now to take legal action if I wanted, and I was starting to consider that. I wanted her to understand that her actions had serious consequences, and that I wasn't going to be some cuckold who takes it lying down. What really pushed me over the edge was discovering how much money had been involved. She'd been secretly funneling money to Mark, and I found deposits into her account from his. It was clear they'd been planning this for a while. I started to realize that her lies, her bitchy attitude, her cheating, they all had a reason behind them: greed, selfishness, a total disregard for our family. That's when I decided I'd fight back, no matter how dirty it got. I was done being the nice guy. The betrayal was too deep, and I needed to make her see that she couldn't keep playing her games without paying a price. So now I'm sitting here, contemplating my next move. The house, the money, the kids' future, all of it feels like it's hanging by a thread. I know I need to act fast, but I also need to keep my cool. This is just the beginning, but I'm already feeling the weight of everything crashing down. I never imagined betrayal could turn into a legal nightmare, but here I am, ready to fight for what's mine, and for my dignity. After I laid out everything on the table, the texts, the hotel photos, the bank transfers, her face went from sneering to outright furious. She tried to deny it again, saying I was jealous, insecure, that Mark was just a professional acquaintance, and that I was blowing things out of proportion. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence. Her bitchy attitude only made me angrier. I could see her trying to spin her lies, trying to turn me into the crazy one, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She started throwing accusations back at me, claiming I'd been controlling, abusive, and that I'd squashed her career to keep her from advancing. That one really made me laugh. She's always been bitchy about my job, but suddenly I was the villain for trying to provide for our family. She said I was jealous of her success. That's when I realized that her entire story was built around her trying to justify her affair, to paint herself as the victim, and to manipulate me into feeling guilty. But I saw through it all. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd rather cheat and lie than face the consequences of her actions. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and that I was done. I told her I was going to get a lawyer and start taking action. She scoffed at that, acting all high and mighty, saying I couldn't do anything, that she'd ruin me financially if I even tried. That's when I realized she'd been planning her revenge all along. She's bitchy and cunning, and she knew exactly how to play the victim to get what she wanted. I could see her calculating, trying to spin this to her advantage. But I was done playing nice. I told her I'd see her in court, and she could try to spin her lies all she wanted. I had enough proof to make her regret everything. Over the next few days, I started talking to lawyers, getting advice, understanding my options. I knew I had grounds for divorce, and I was prepared to fight for custody and the estate. Her lies about her career being squashed were just that, lies. I knew she'd been trying to manipulate the situation, maybe even threaten me with lawsuits, but I wasn't going to back down. I knew her type: bitchy, entitled, and willing to lie her way out of anything. She'd been trying to paint herself as the victim, but I knew the truth. She'd been screwing her boss for months, probably hoping to get a big payout, and now she was trying to turn the tables on me. Meanwhile, I was also watching her money moves. She'd been secretly transferring funds, funneling money to Mark, and even trying to hide some of the cash in offshore accounts. I wasn't stupid. I knew she'd been planning her escape, her way out of our life together. I started to wonder how much she'd already spent, how much she'd taken from our joint estate, and what her endgame was. I realized I had to move fast if I wanted to protect what was mine. I was already imagining her trying to claim I'd been controlling her or squashing her career. It was classic bitchy manipulation, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The biggest shock was discovering her plans to sue me for half of our estate, $375,000, claiming I'd somehow ruined her career. She's bitchy enough to spin that story, but I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this all along, trying to squeeze as much out of me as possible. Honestly, that kind of greed made me sick. I'd worked my ass off for that money, and now she was trying to take half because she was caught cheating. It was a slap in the face. I started thinking about how to counter her claims, how to protect myself legally, and how to make sure she didn't walk away with a fortune for her betrayal. I also started reflecting on how this whole thing changed me. I used to be a trusting guy, believing in loyalty and honesty. Now I saw that some people, especially bitchy women like her, are willing to do anything for money, for their own selfish needs. This experience has taught me a lot about how betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, and how important it is to protect yourself financially and emotionally. I'm not just fighting for my money, I'm fighting for my dignity, my reputation, and my future. Honestly, I don't know how this will all end. I'm still trying to process everything, still trying to figure out the best way to move forward. The legal fight is just beginning, and I know she'll keep trying to manipulate and lie her way through it. But I'm done trusting her, done believing her bitchy excuses. I've got enough evidence now to take her down, and I plan to do just that. She might be bitchy and manipulative, but I'm not going down without a fight. I'll protect everything I've worked for, and I'll make her regret ever crossing me. The legal battle started almost immediately after that confrontation. I hired a lawyer, someone sharp and experienced, because I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about protecting my estate, my reputation, and making sure she couldn't manipulate her way into a bigger payout. The first thing we did was file for divorce, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. She went ballistic when she found out. Her bitchy side really came out then, calling me all sorts of names, accusing me of trying to ruin her and claiming I'd been controlling her career to keep her from succeeding. I just sat there, listening to her tirade, knowing that her words were just another way to spin her lies. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I'd squashed her career, and that she deserved half of everything because I'd ruined her life. I laughed internally at that. Ruined her life. She was the one screwing her boss and lying to my face. She was the bitchy queen of manipulation, and I'd caught her red-handed. The more she yelled, the more I realized how desperate she was to cling to her lies. She even threatened to sue me for custody of the kids, claiming I was an unfit father because I'd been controlling. That was laughable. I knew her game. She was trying to turn the tables, spin her betrayal into some kind of martyrdom. Meanwhile, I was gathering everything, more proof of her affair, her financial schemes, and her attempts to hide money. I wanted to make sure she couldn't walk away with a big chunk of my estate, especially since she was already scheming for a legal payout. I had started documenting her financial transactions, saving all her texts and emails, and even hiring a private investigator to track her movements. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way into half of our assets. She'd been bitchy and sneaky for months, but now I had her cornered with cold, hard facts. What really pissed me off was her constant bitchy attitude about money. She'd always been the type to complain about how hard she worked, how she deserved everything. Yet now she was trying to take half of what I earned, claiming I'd ruined her career. That was her plan all along: cheat, lie, manipulate, and then squeeze as much as she could out of me. I could see her bitchy smirk whenever she thought she was winning, but I knew better. I knew her game. And I was ready to fight fire with fire. The emotional toll was brutal, though. I'd wake up some mornings feeling numb, like I'd been punched in the gut. I loved her, at least I thought I did, and the betrayal cut so deep I questioned everything. How could she do this to me? To our kids? I kept replaying the moments when she was bitchy, dismissive, and distant. It all made sense now. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, and I'd been too blind or too trusting to see it. That realization made me more furious. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to reclaim my life from her manipulative, bitchy claws. The worst part was knowing she was trying to turn her affair into a weapon against me. She kept claiming I was controlling her, trying to ruin her career, and that I'd been jealous of her success. She painted herself as the victim, even though I had all the proof of her cheating. It was so typical of her bitchy attitude. She always thought she was smarter than everyone else, always trying to twist things around to fit her narrative. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I knew her game, and I was prepared to expose her for the liar she really was. As the weeks went by, the legal process dragged on. She hired her own lawyer, and the bitchy accusations flew back and forth. She even tried to sue me for custody, claiming I'd squashed her career and that I'd been abusive, another lie. I knew she was doing everything she could to drag me down, to make me look like the villain. But I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I was ready for whatever came next. I started to see that this was no longer just about her cheating. It was about her trying to destroy me, her greed, and her bitchy need for control. One thing I realized through all this: betrayal like this, especially when intertwined with money and manipulation, can turn your entire world upside down. I'd never been more angry or more determined. I was no longer the naive guy who believed in fairy tales. This was real life, and I had to protect myself. I was preparing for a fight, not just in court, but in every aspect of my life. I knew she'd try to manipulate the court, spin her lies, and play the victim, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. And that was what mattered most. The court dates kept getting closer, and I could feel the pressure mounting. She was still bitchy, still throwing accusations, trying to paint herself as the victim of my supposed control and career sabotage. It was almost laughable. She was the one sneaking around with her boss, lying to my face, and now she was trying to turn it all into some kind of martyrdom. Her lawyer was equally bitchy, twisting words, trying to spin her affair into a personal struggle, and claiming I'd been emotionally abusive. I just sat through those hearings, knowing full well that her entire case was built on bullshit. Behind the scenes, I was working with my lawyer to prepare for the big fight over the estate. She was claiming I'd squashed her career, trying to get half of everything, including our $750 estate. She was bitchy and entitled enough to think she deserved it all because she suffered, even though she was the one who'd betrayed me. I had proof she'd been funneling money to Mark, hiding assets, and making plans to run off with a big payout. I was determined to stop her, even if it meant going to court and exposing every dirty detail. The emotional toll was brutal. I went through waves of anger, sadness, and frustration. I kept asking myself how I missed all of this, how I could have been so blind. I'd loved her, trusted her. Hell, I'd even defended her when people said she was bitchy or difficult. But all that trust was gone now. Every good memory I had was tainted by her betrayal. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every argument, every moment she was bitchy or dismissive, wondering how I didn't see the signs earlier. It's like I'd been living with a stranger all along, and now I was just trying to hold the pieces together. Her bitchy attitude only got worse as the legal battles dragged on. She'd call me names, accuse me of destroying her life, and try to manipulate the kids into thinking I was the bad guy. She'd even threaten to sue me for custody, claiming I was controlling and abusive, all lies to try to get the upper hand. I knew her game, she was desperate, and her bitchy side was showing more than ever. But I stayed calm, focused on gathering more evidence and preparing for the final fight. What made it worse was realizing how much her greed was driving her. She wanted half of our estate, money we'd worked years for, because she thought she deserved it. Her bitchy entitlement was so obvious. She'd been planning her escape for months, and now she was trying to squeeze everything she could out of me. I kept thinking about how she'd betrayed the trust of our marriage, how she'd used her bitchy charm to manipulate everyone around her, me, the kids, even her own family, just to get what she wanted. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. I'd always believed in loyalty and honesty, but she'd proven me wrong. She was a master manipulator, and her bitchy attitude was just her way of controlling everything. I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, dignity, and standing up for myself. I was tired of being the fool, tired of her lies, tired of her bitchy attitude acting like she was the victim. As I prepared for the final court hearings, I understood that this was the culmination of everything. I had to stay strong, stay focused, and fight for what was rightfully mine. I knew she'd keep lying, keep manipulating, but I had enough proof to shut her down. The more she tried to spin her lies, the more I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, bitchy woman who'd do anything for money, even if it meant destroying her own family. That realization made me more determined than ever to end this nightmare, to protect my estate, and to reclaim some sense of dignity from the chaos she'd created. The court hearing was a whirlwind. She showed up with her bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent, like she hadn't been screwing her boss for months, like she hadn't lied about everything. Her lawyer tried to spin her story, claiming I'd controlled her, that I'd squashed her career, and that she deserved half of everything because she was suffering. But I had the evidence, texts, bank statements, hotel receipts that told a different story. I sat there, calm and collected, watching her bitchy facade crack under the weight of the truth. When it was my turn, I laid out everything clearly. Her affair, her financial schemes, her attempts to hide assets, and her manipulative lies. I explained how she'd been planning her escape for months, trying to squeeze as much money as possible from our joint estate. I could see her trying to interrupt, trying to spin her usual lies, but the judge wasn't having it. The proof was irrefutable. It was like watching her bitchy mask fall apart in real time, revealing the selfish, manipulative woman beneath. In the end, the judge awarded me full custody of the kids, and I managed to keep most of the estate, more than enough to start fresh. She got a fraction of what she wanted, but honestly, I didn't care about the money anymore. What mattered was that I finally saw her for what she really was, a bitchy, greedy woman who'd betrayed everything we built for some secret sex and a desire for more. The court didn't buy her lies, and I walked out feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. The aftermath was brutal but necessary. She moved out, bitchy and furious, trying to spin her story to anyone who would listen. But I knew the truth, and I knew I'd done everything I could to protect myself and our children. I took some time to heal, to process the betrayal, something I never thought I'd have to do. I realized that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, and sometimes the only way forward is to cut ties completely. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. Betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, and it often comes with a bitchy attitude and a desire for money. But I also learned that standing up for yourself, gathering evidence, and fighting for what's right can make all the difference. I don't regret exposing her lies or fighting for my future. If anything, I feel a strange sense of empowerment, like I finally took control of my life again. To anyone out there going through something similar, I'll say this: don't ignore the red flags. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, and never let someone manipulate their way into your life and your money. Betrayal hurts, yeah, but sometimes the only way to reclaim your dignity is to face it head on and fight back. That's what I did, and honestly, I feel like I've finally started to move on from the bitchy chaos she left behind.